Hello and welcome to my homestead. I want to do an update this time on the garden, not just flowers, although you've seen quite a few videos from me on bunnies and birds and squirrels and flowers, of course. But this time I want to do an overview of everything. So please bear with me, and if you want to stay to the end, I'll show you a few interesting things. But you can see everything is changing really fast. Let's see. Yellow corn is growing quite well. A little bit stressed out. It's already sending the flower shoots, which it's not supposed to for another couple of months. It's way too small, but we've been stressed out by high temperatures. The black corn or blue corn is doing much better, has a lot more nitrogen. So it's tall, but it's not sending out shoots yet. So let's start here. These are my potato patches. The first couple of rows are the Yukon Gold. I already have been digging them for young potatoes, or not digging, just pulling out some of the young potatoes with my hand. You can see they lay down a little bit and they're almost done. So when they're finished, I'm gonna put some more squash in here. Speaking of squash, I have zucchinis growing, doing quite well. So Rochelle, this is for you. You asked if I can grow zucchini in a pot instead of just out in the soil. Yes, you can grow zucchini in a pot as long as it has enough room for the roots. This is a fairly large pot, but it has enough room for both leaves, and you can see it is stressed out because we've been so hot and dry. Even though I water, it's still a problem. But yes, you can grow there. Alright, so I do have a couple more zucchinis in here. They're also blooming. You can see them. They're doing quite well. I tried to shield these with potatoes, so I planted them in between potato rows, and it does work. Unfortunately, I've lost some of the battle with the Colorado beetle, as you can see. Just when I thought I got rid of all of them, they're still here. I'll have to go and pick them more. Alright, so in between this blue corn, I have some Pennsylvania Dutch crookneck squash. It's not your regular summer crookneck. This is the hardy winter squash, let alone. It wasn't doing anything for a while. It was just sitting there, so I'm assuming it was developing roots. But all of a sudden, all the squash just took off. You can see the large leaves, and it sent out runners. So it's definitely developing. It's growing really fast and doing very well. And it doesn't mind the corn. There was no room for beans, so I cannot do the three sisters here. So it's going to be just the two sisters, the squash and the corn. I have some self-seeded potatoes that are sent out a lot of greenery. Hopefully that means there is a lot of potatoes underneath as well. The transplanted peppers are not doing too well. They've been sick for a long time. I think next time I'm not going to have to transplant them. I'll show you a little bit later why. You'll understand that I'm growing them in pots already instead of digging them out all the time and damaging the roots. Here's another pumpkin or squash. I guess it is a squash. It's a cheese pumpkin. It's self-seeded. One of the pumpkins had gone bad over the winter, and I threw it out onto the bed just to get a little bit more compost on the bed and for the birds and for the animals to eat. I did not realize it was going to self-seed and grow. So I have a lot of pumpkins growing here. They all came from the same center where it was thrown. It decomposed inside, and it sent out a lot of runners. You can see huge leaves, doing quite well. It's getting ready to bloom. And some of them actually have teeny tiny blooms, female. There we go. So hopefully we'll have some pumpkins. I do have some tomatoes in here, so I'm not sure how well the pumpkins and tomatoes will work together. Every stake, so every one of these stakes is a tomato plant. They're doing quite well, very bushy. So if you remember, last year I had tomatoes in that area, and all of those tomatoes had blight, so I had to move them. This is where I had corn last year, so instead of corn I have tomatoes here. I do have some tomatoes already formed and ripening. They're doing quite well. Unfortunately, I cannot get to them right now because of the pumpkins. I'm gonna have to figure out later once they start ripening, and they're turning white right now, so they're about to turn color. But I have no idea how to get to them without trampling on this pumpkin. So here we have a few cabbages. These are the ones that my sister gave me. She gave me seedlings. She said they're supposed to be giant, and they're fairly big. Definitely bigger than anything I have grown before. They take a lot of space, so each one of these is huge. It's about 3 feet, maybe 3.5 feet across. And you can see beautiful heads forming. They're nice and crisp. But there's still a lot of growth to be done, so I'm not touching them. They still have a lot of growing to do. I do have one pepper in here. I just ran out of space for everything else. This bed has gone out of control. I desperately need to weed it, but tomatoes here are growing quite well. They've recovered, and some of them actually started blooming. I didn't even know if they were going to survive. They were in such a poor shape as seedlings. They were way overgrown inside. But they've recovered and they're doing really well. Not as well as the others, but not bad. We even have teeny tiny tomatoes. I also have some beans in here that are getting ready to bloom. Again, weeds are definitely a problem. I've been trying to cope with weeds on the other side, on other beds, but I've neglected this one. So from here you can see there is a lot of stuff that needs to be done. It's one of the problems of running the homestead by yourself. Everything needs to be done, and there is never enough time in the day, plus working full-time, so it's definitely a problem. Now we're coming to this little jungle. I say it's jungle, but with a sense of humor. This was intended. I actually wanted to kill the weeds by growing so much interplanted stuff, and I told you before, if you have seen my previous videos, I have rows of peppers interplanted with beets and some self-seeded tomatoes. I also have some nice sunflowers that I finally took off around the edges. So I have beans that are getting ready to bloom, so in another few days I'll have fresh beans. Beans are planted in between the peppers, and there is also a few radishes. Quite nice. I've been eating them for a while now. There are some really large ones too. But I don't want to pull all of them because I just can't eat that much all at once. Now, the beets are doing really well. You can see nice lush greenery, no signs of stress or disease. They're beginning to form teeny tiny beets. So in another 3 weeks or so, I'll be able to pick some beets. Some of these tomatoes, like I said, they're self-seeded. I did not plant them. This area had blight last year, so my guess is these are the self-seeded tomatoes from the ones that died. Here are peppers. They're getting nice and bushy and sending a lot of flowers. They've been also stressed out. But at this point, I don't want to pick any flowers anymore. I picked the first ones and let them grow a little bit bushy, and I pinched them so that they would split. This is what I mean. You can see the central stalk was split into two. So I have two stalks, and it will be more sturdy, but I do need to provide support for them. So between beans and beets and tomatoes and peppers, there is a lot of stuff happening. There is also some lima beans that I planted late, but they're still catching up. My sister has some heritage beans. I'll show you in a little bit. This is the pepper that I mentioned earlier that I'm growing in a pot. I wanted to make sure that I have at least a couple of peppers in pots, so I don't have to transplant them for the winter, and they will stay in pots. These are fairly large, so there is more than enough room for the roots, and they have really nice rich soil with lots of compost and cow manure or mature cow manure. Alright, so next to my sunflowers, I also have some cucumbers. As you can see, I provided some support for it to climb. And cucumbers are getting ready. They're blooming, so they're getting ready to produce. I have 3. These are English cucumbers, solid cucumbers. This one split into 2 lines. You can see they're climbing vigorously, doing very well. And again, beans are blooming, so soon we'll have beans. So right here I have some of the Italian heritage beans that my sister gave me. She wanted to try them. Somebody said that it's the best beans they've ever had. I guess we'll find out. They're quite tall, some of them. I thought I was going to lose them. The birds have snipped the tops of these beans, but instead they split and they gave me more runners. So instead of just one line, I have multiple lines, multiple runners. These two have one runner each, and you can see how much higher they are. They're almost to the top. But at the same time, I don't know if they will produce any more or any less than the others. So I guess it will be an interesting experiment to see whether or not having more runners will culminate in more beans. Alright, so this little jungle are my tomatoes, or some of my tomatoes. This year I'm experimenting with different ways of securing tomatoes or providing support for them. Back there you saw the stakes. So those tomatoes are staked. These I have in netting. So I have these 5-foot poles. They're dug in fairly strong, so they're secured, and the netting is secured in between them. So even though it's prolapsed on in between, it's actually quite nice and taut. So these tomatoes will have plenty of netting to climb up. They're doing much better than the others. They're about 2.5, almost 3 feet high now. So they're doing quite well. And most of them are blooming and producing tomatoes already. If I go inside, I can show you some tomatoes that are already formed. But I don't want to, right now I don't want to show, well, I don't want to go inside and trample on them. Oh, there is one close by, so I can show you this one. So they're all blooming, they're all setting fruit, and hopefully they're not going to get blight like we did last year, so we'll see what happens. Again, weeds are a problem. Another method, so we have stakes, we have netting, and I have cages, tomato cages. These are the typical or traditional support. They're doing really well. These are very strong, so I wanted to make sure they have individual stakes, and I do need to make sure that they are actually utilizing them. I have some carrots here. I desperately need to weed them out and pull them out. Some of them are beginning to go into bloom. Like this carrot has gone into bloom. When you see a stalk like this, it's not going to be a good eating carrot, so I need to pull it out. I do have some greenery here, parsley. So this is Italian parsley. Sorry, flat leaf and curly leaf. Both are Italian parsleys. If I walk over here, these are also peppers. These are the late addition. My sister had too many seedlings, so she brought me some of the seedlings that she didn't have room for to plant over by her. So I planted them here. They are way behind, and unlike the other ones, you can see they're struggling, but hopefully they will recover and they will grow. I have my garlic almost ready to be, well, not almost, it is ready to be pulled out. Unfortunately, it's not easy to do. So if I go over here, the soil is very compact, so it's hard to do anything with it. So mostly clay, or what we call hard pan. So it's fully formed, garlic is done. I just need to pull it out. Some are better than others. These are the small ones. I have some big elephant over there. Not elephant, but they're large, giant garlics. Okay, so from here, one of my strawberry patches, still blooming, still producing. I've been eating strawberries since probably middle of March, so for a couple of months now. I do have like a few tomatoes here, and as you can see, I'm not digging out any of the weeds, mostly because to preserve the soil from drying out. We have not had a whole lot of rain, so it's always a problem. But I do water them, so tomatoes are setting and getting really nice. Those are cherry tomatoes. So in this bed I have cherry tomatoes. I wanted to make sure that I have cherry tomatoes separate from the sauce tomatoes. Everything in there is a sauce tomatoes or salad tomatoes. So I've shown you this bed before. We have carrots and onions in here. As you can see, some of the carrots are going into bloom. They were self-seeded to begin with. I don't want to pull them all out. And there is more of them going into bloom. You can see the stalks. But you can also see the onions. They're beginning to push up, and in a few weeks they'll be ready to come outside. I also have a few tomatoes here, but I don't know why the others did not survive. My sister planted 6 tomato plants here. I only have 3 that survived. I have no idea why. 3 lived and 3 died. But the ones that lived, doing quite well. They have teeny tiny lisianthuses that I try to save. I can't say that they're doing too well. They're definitely struggling. They're still teeny tiny. So perhaps somebody can explain to me how you can have onion sets from the same set. It's nice and large, and this one is not doing anything at all. So same set, same bag, same seeds. Some of them are doing well and some are not doing anything at all. I have a few more cucumbers here. These are the Persian cucumbers. They were lately added. I also unfortunately decided to separate them because they were growing together. So by separating, I damaged the roots. So they were struggling for a while, but now they're recovering. Beginning to grow. So they're behind the others. The others were not damaged, but these are now recovering and trying to catch up. I have the lisianthus bed that my sister had planted. And a few of the ranunculus. So here is a ranunculus plant. There are a few of them. I don't expect them to bloom this year, but hopefully they'll form the bulbs for next year. And you can see the lisianthuses are becoming a little bit leggy, which is what I want. If they send out shoots like this, and they send out side shoots, I'll actually have some flowers. So I can't wait to see this flower bed in full bloom. Over here I have my bed with daffodils, a few cabbages, a couple kohlrabi, and my green peas. Now the green peas, as you can see, were sick for whatever reason. They all got sick, but then I added a little bit of extra food to them, and the result was immediate. I have bunches and bunches of peas that started growing again. Now this is the second flush. I mean, these are definitely different from the first one. The first one was very long and skinny. These are much thicker, bigger pots. But you can see the peas themselves are definitely dying off. You can see a lot of yellow. So as soon as I pick all of these green peas, this is the green arrow, I will cut down all of the greenery, the actual stalks. I will cut it out and let everything else continue growing. The daffodils are now down, and so are some of my poppy seeds. This is a bread poppy, bread seed. If you've ever had a muffin with poppy seed, this is how they're growing. Once they're matured, I'll be able to dry them out and have poppy seeds for baking. Growing very nicely. And this is what they look like when they're blooming. It's a beautiful bloom. Unfortunately, they only bloom for a day or so. Now I also have the ornamental poppy seeds here, and one of them is actually blooming, so I want to show you this. This is the Dutch or Danish. You can see the design, red with black on the inside. Gorgeous. These are not edible. So this is an edible bread poppy. The other one is ornamental. Cabbages here are not doing anywhere near as good as the others. This bed definitely does not have the same composition, but they're still growing. As pitiful as they are, they're still growing. This is one of my favorites. What I want to show you is, look at the amount of bees in here. I know it's hard to follow them, but just about every flower has honeybees on it. This is why I wanted to have my own hive. Right now my yard is buzzing. These bachelor buttons are heaven sent for bees. It's what they need. It's their pollen source, and they absolutely love it. There's so many of them. I have a nice combination of flowers here. This is the pincushion. The bees absolutely adore it. I don't know what these yellow ones are. I just love how they look. I have some thyme that's blooming as well. It's almost done, so I need to trim it back. Gorgeous, gorgeous flowers, and again, bees love them. This is what I wanted to have, a pollinator patch, wildflowers meadow in my garden. I also have some flowers that I planted, like these tiger lilies. have some daisies here. That's actually one of my favorites. Simple flower, but provides a nice contrast to everything else. I have some Asian lilies. They've been blooming for a while, so they're almost done now. And you can see I covered some of my grapes, hoping to save it from the birds. Again, I've showed you another video where I am at war with birds, so I refuse to give them all of my fruit, and hoping to save at least some of it. Alright, so I have my citrus trees. These are all lemons. I do have an avocado in here. Actually, there are a couple of them, but they're hard to see. I want to show you a quick update here. You can see I've reorganized some of my stuff. I have a lot of stuff in my pots. And yes, I do have another pepper in a very large pot. It's doing quite well. My oranges. This is the navel orange. Doing quite well. Unfortunately, this orange tree had dropped all of it, all of the fruit. I have my figs that are setting out teeny tiny buds, so I'll have fresh figs on this one, on this tree. It's about time too. I have the cocktail pomelo, doing really well. It dropped everything else, and you can see when it drops, even though it was fully formed, it just could not sustain that much fruit when it's too young. This tree is too small. My mangoes have recovered quite nicely. I thought they would die, and instead they all went into growth. So I'm very happy with it. There is a lot of greenery here. Here is another pomelo. This one has a lot of fruit. I'm not sure how it will support it. The tree is just not that big. But I'm guessing it's gonna drop some of it still. This is a clementine. It's been sick for a long time, so it's been dropping fruit as well. But it still has some. So hopefully I'll have some clementines here. I have summer squash in here. It's been producing for a while, and I already picked a few. So yes, you can have squash in a pot, assuming the pot is large enough. This is one of my bigger pots. But I do need to provide it with calcium. I can see that some of them are dying off. So this one is definitely a problem. It's wilting. I transplanted a few of my pineapples, so they will have a little bit more food, and they're doing quite well. Lots of new growth. Papayas are doing very well, except for one. I have no idea what's happening on this one. It was sick for a very long time, and it's curling, and it's definitely has some kind of virus. Some cherry tomatoes that I've already been picking. Busily producing. You can see lots of tomatoes forming. So if I want to have some fried green tomatoes, I have plenty to pick from. This is known as clementine tree. So hopefully I'll have at least a few clementines from it. Alright. So over here, this is what I said, I reorganized some stuff. You can see I took the passion fruit outside. It has trellis to climb on, the netting. Bananas are also outside, and I have a few of the cantaloupes here. So I have these 2 pots with cantaloupes, and that big pot. I need to provide trellis for it, but you can see it's sending out runners, so it's ready to climb. This pot is big enough and it has a lot of soil and compost inside. I have some beans here, also with cantaloupes, so hopefully these cantaloupes will also grow. I am delighted to see the passion fruit recovering. For a long time it was very, very sick. You can see a lot of growth. But what's really making me happy is to see that it's actually getting ready to bloom. This is a flower bud. And here is another flower bud. So hopefully it will bloom soon. And I'll enjoy at least the flowers. I don't know if it will actually sustain the fruit. But I'm just happy that this time it's blooming in June instead of October. It's definitely happier this time around. Alright, so let's go to the front. Actually, before we go, you can see my chickens are enjoying a few more minutes outside. We are expecting a major storm today, so hopefully we'll get some desperately needed water. But that also means they get to take their bath. This is the dust bath. And they can run outside. They normally don't like the hot sun, so they stay away from it. I wish I could come closer to this dahlia. It's hard to show without getting closer to it, but it's huge. It's at least 6 to 7 inches across. And there are some yellow ones in the background. And Becca agrees with me. I have a new addition dahlia. I have not had it before, so this was planted this past spring, and I'm curious to find out what color it will be. The roses are doing quite well. I've shown you before. They're gorgeous, and unfortunately the Japanese beetle is out in full force and trying to eat them down. The Lady of Shalott has stopped blooming, so I'll let it rest for a couple of, I guess, weeks, and it will reset itself. And anytime I come close to chickens, they think I'm giving them more treats, so they're out here looking for mama. No, you're not getting any more worms. There is a butterfly bush. It's hard to see, but it's in full bloom. There is another one here. I love butterfly bush, although these have overgrown. I need to desperately to cut them down. These are the same kind of dahlias, just not as big, but still huge. Gorgeous colors. Not the shape that I like. It's a little bit too messy for me, but I like the color. My gladioluses are all going into bloom. about 2 months early. I don't know why, but this year they decided to go into bloom early. And you can see that I'm providing support for them. I have to prop them up, otherwise they will fall down, like this one is doing. You can see how it's leaning outward. When they're on a slope, it's hard to keep them up. More gladioluses, more dahlias, beautiful violet color. They're gorgeous, and bees do love them. Really dark maroon color. Now these are in full bloom. Ironically, it actually changed color. It used to be really deep, almost brownish color, but now it's gone lighter red. You can see they're already beginning to die off, so they don't last very long. That's one of the things with all of these flowers. None of them last very long, but I'm just surrounded by flowers, and that's what I love. The peace rose. I mean, look at this beauty. And it has multiple buds attached to it. So I can't really complain. I love being able to come outside here, and every morning as soon as I come outside, I'm greeted by flowers. That's exactly what I wanted, to be surrounded by them. Gorgeous gladioli. The blackberries are getting ready to ripen. Here's a couple of white gladioluses. Gorgeous. And there's another one. And an orange one. Light orange color. You've seen my roses before. Some of them had stopped blooming and reset themselves, and some are going into second flush now, so second bloom. Like this one is going into second bloom. This is a climber. I don't know what this bug is, but it's destroying all of my roses. I've already sprayed it with 7, so hopefully it will kill the bugs. But you can also see even the new growth has a lot of black spot, and this has been a horrible thing here. All the roses are infected. Unfortunately, I've lost this one. I think I don't think I'll be able to save it, even though I keep spraying it with fungicide. I just couldn't save it. I was able to save this one, so I'm very happy that to see it blooming, and it has nice young shoot growing, especially since it's a climber. Hopefully it will be more resilient, but still. And the red mini Mr. Lincoln. Oh yeah, I have lots of birds here. There are new hatchlings. you've seen my videos. Unfortunately, my trellis has broken down, so now I have to either buy a new trellis or figure out how to fix this one. The wind was just too. But look at this beauty. Stunning. I love Mr. Lincoln. It's such a gorgeous place. It's such a gorgeous rose. Alright, so one more look at the wilderness patches. Let's go to the front orchard and the garden there. Before we go there, a couple more things here. I have my pomegranate in full bloom right now. So this is what it looks like when it blooms. And these already dropped the petals, but the actual pomegranate ova is still there. Unfortunately, they have not been setting, they've been dropping. So for whatever reason, they're not pollinating, and instead they drop off. I hope to have at least one pomegranate out of this bush. It's strong enough, and it definitely has enough capability to support or to sustain some of the fruit. Blueberries have been in full season. I've been eating them quite a bit. Nice large berries. But as I've shown you before, I am keeping them all protected. I wasn't joking when I said I'm going to war whispers, otherwise they will strip everything. They will take all of the blueberries. I refuse to give them up. So these are the blackberries. Huge blackberries. They're a little bit more sour than I like. Not as sweet, but that's okay. I can make jam out of them in the future. For now, I'm just enjoying freshly eaten ones. I do have a couple of teeny tiny kiwis that have formed. So that's one. And there is another one over here. It's hard to focus on it, but at least two kiwis had formed. Alright, let's go to the front. So this patch, I need to add a little bit more cover so they can spread a little bit more. I have sweet potatoes or yams. You can see they're growing quite nicely. Hopefully they'll form some roots. And next to them I have watermelons. And this is why I say I need to provide more cover, because I don't want them spraying in outside like this. So I need to put another cover here so they have more room to spread. But watermelons are running and they're doing quite well. We're in my orchard. I do have a few figs that have formed. And something has been eating them, so I'm not sure what. But this fig tree has finally gone into full production mode, so I'm going to have a lot of figs on these. I am delighted. I also have some peaches here. In another 3 or 4 weeks, they should start ripening. Last year I had a few persimmons here, and I picked 2 of them, and I think it was too much stress for the young tree, because this year I only have 1 persimmon that had formed. Nothing else. This is a chocolate persimmon, but I'll be happy with at least 1 if I can keep the tree alive. I have a patch of flowers here. This is the bed that my sister has been cultivating. Lavender is doing quite well. The bees love it. It's almost done and gone into seed. But look at all these lilies. That's a lot of lilies. And the smell is absolutely amazing. There are some lisianthuses here as well, but they're not doing it quite as well. They're still tiny. I don't know what this flower is. It's weird looking. I have some asters here. They're almost done blooming. They've been blooming for a few weeks now. And I'm not sure what this is, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I think it's a black pincushion. And more lilies getting ready to bloom. Some more asters. And a few ranunculus that are weird shape. This is not something I had ordered. This is what they're supposed to look like. And instead I've got flat ones. So, go figure. And some more pincushions. Some stalks. Gorgeous lavender color. Some more white stalks. The lavender that I bought and planted this year, the other ones had died, so I'm delighted to see that they're blooming. It looks like I have at least one of these self-seeded one. And a teeny tiny zinnia. Hopefully it will go into seed and spread some seeds. Alright, let's go to the main portion of the garden here. So here we are. My sister had planted a few more feijoas. Right now they're just sitting here. They're really not doing much. There are three new ones. I have a whole bunch of Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes. This year I think I will need to dig out most of them. There are way too many of them, and they're too close together at this point. There's another feijoa. And you can see what happens when bunnies are here. Yep, that's a result of bunnies. They stripped all of the leaves. Bunnies do jump high. and they love sunflowers. So I also have lots of tomatoes here. These are mostly sauce tomatoes and potatoes here. So you can see tomatoes are forming quite well. Potatoes are definitely struggling against the the Colorado beetle. The Colorado beetle has been eating them. I've tried to capture as many as I could, shake them off, but it's definitely a jungle here. Even though there was enough space, here is the Colorado beetles, as I mentioned. Even though I try to keep up with them, there's still too many of them. So hopefully these potatoes will come out soon and tomatoes will have more breathing room. Luckily we had a lot of hot weather, but not a lot of humid weather until just this week. Of course, having everything interplanted so closely also provides shade for the soil. So there's not as much grass growing. And between tomatoes and potatoes, they definitely do shade out a lot of stuff. But you can see it's a jungle. So all the tomatoes have stakes propping up. This is the pawpaw that my sister had planted a couple of years ago. It was teeny tiny. It was about this high. So what, maybe 6-7 inches twig. Now it's huge. It's getting bushy. And I do have a couple of rows of peppers here on the outside. Again, I picked the central ones before. Let them split. I want to make sure that they have enough strength to grow. So I don't know if this experiment will work or not. It is a little bit too much growth too close together for my taste. I would have preferred a little bit more air circulation between these plants. Well, a lot more air circulation. But so far they seem to be doing quite well, and they're shading each other from burning out in the hot sun. Here I have my pear tree. This is a 4-in-1, and the one that's really producing is Bartlett. These are Bartlett pears. There's a lot of them. I know it's hard to see with all of the greenery, but I hope that means I'm actually gonna get a chance to try some of the pears. The plums did not hold on onto any of the plums. They all dropped, as did this apple tree. It had flowers but dropped the flowers. Same with this nectarine, and I do need to do some corrective shaping for this nectarine. It's too dense, so I need to thin out and prune it, do some summer pruning. But I do have one teeny tiny apple. This is Honeycrisp. So hopefully I'll get to try Honeycrisp apple. This is a 3-in-1 apple tree, different varieties. So one more look at my orchard. The bees are enjoying all of the clover that's blooming right now. Actually, before we go from here, let's go to the vineyard. One more look at the orchard and the front garden. And here are the grape vines. Some of them are barely surviving. I have no idea what's going on with them. I tried to shape these, but they're not doing well. Only one is actually producing grapes. And chickens realize that I'm on this side, so of course they have to run to mama. There is a lot of vegetation. And Queenie flapping her wings. Silly babies. Actually, there is another one that's growing, and I didn't realize it was blooming. So it also said fruit. It's gonna be interesting. I do have rabbits. As you can see, they're droppings. Lots of rabbits. There's self-seeded squash of some sort. I have no idea what variety it is. We always have to follow mama. My walnut grove, I have 6 walnuts here that are growing. You can see them. They're finally beginning to fill out. Doing quite well. I do need to spray them from fungus. I can see some of the signs of fungus on them. My watermelons are finally poking their heads through. Took them long enough. Hopefully I'll have some watermelons from this batch. There are more watermelons on this side as well, but they're not doing too well. So each one of the holes have watermelons in them. Hopefully they'll start growing soon. But I also have some self-seeded stuff that I did not plant around the chicken coop. Some of it was what chickens had kicked out from their seeds. I have this huge sunflower, self-seeded. I have some kind of squash. I have no idea what variety it is. My guess it's either the... Yes, Lavia, I can hear you. Thank you very much. Queenie, don't yell. So either this is the butternut or the Japanese squash, and a few more sunflowers. I do have grapes growing here as well. They're running up. They're not producing anything. Actually, yes, they are producing. I didn't even realize that. These are not the grapes for the table. I just wanted grapes to provide some shade for the chicken coop. You can see I have them shaded from the sun. I don't know what this is, but I think it's some kind of rye or wheat or something self-seeded. Again, it's amusing to me because I did not plant any of it. There is some sorghum, some corn. I did not plant any of it. And some more sunflowers. What I really enjoy is all of these flowers. You know, it's hard to see them. The yellow and the white and a little bit of lilac, that's flowers. I'm trying to cultivate as many as possible to provide food for bees. So even though it doesn't look very well for my yard, I should really cut down some of the grass. But bunnies love it and the bees love it. So we're back where we started, on the outside of my garden, going inward. I hope you enjoyed this tour and an overview of everything that's growing here. As I said, it's a jungle, and it's definitely a lot of work and work in progress. There's always a lot of work to be done here. But I love to be able to come outside and pick snacks like these radishes, just like I've been picking blueberries and mulberries and lots of green peas. So on this note, thank you for joining me, and until next time.